Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Two in a Canoe panel. Thank you for joining us on day 3 of Camp Y8. We're so happy to have you, everyone who's watching at home via Twitch, which just discovered days ago. I did not know what that was before that. We're so happy to have you. My name is Jacqueline Sylvester. I am the author of Wonder Kids, the Wonder Kids trilogy, and co-author of the soon-to-be-released Bloodweb Chronicles, Vampires of Moscow. And I'm joined today by Angie Simmons, author of the Indigo Chronicles, and my co-author, hello, and my co-author under the joint pen name Cadis Knight. And I'm also joined by Sasha and Serena Nanua in the, for me, it's the bottom corner, who are sisters and twins, co-authors of Sister and the Snake and the Pendant trilogy. Sister of the Snake is out in 2021 via Harper Teen, and I've already looked it up and I've put it on my TBR and I've saved it, and yeah, I'm excited for it, basically. So to those watching at home, you can put in some questions throughout and they will be relayed to us later and we can attack them towards the end of panel. So you can add some questions if you want. Okay, welcome everybody. That was a rant. I'm so happy to have you. We're gonna jump into it from the beginning, just a good place to start. What made each one of you want to co-write and why? And did you have any worries before making this co-authorship decision? And we're gonna start with Sasha and Serena and then move on to Natalie.
I think for us, it was always very natural because we are twins. But we started writing when we were 9 years old, so it wasn't really much of a choice. It was more like, let's just do this and it's fun. And then it eventually became more of a thing where we were actually pursuing it professionally. And it just always felt very natural because we're twins and we're always wanting to write together. We're always together anyway. So it was like, let's just do this together. Yeah. And we've always grown up loving reading. So I think that just naturally progressed into a love of writing. And even though we both like reading different genres and different age categories and stuff, we both love to write the same thing. So it was just kind of a natural partnership.
Yeah, very cool. I wish I had a twin. Natalie? Why do you regret your decision of co-authorship?
Why on earth did I start doing this with you? Well, Jacqueline and I met at YALC, Young Adult Literary Convention in London years ago. So my first book, my debut, The Path Keep, had come out and I had a stand there, and I was with a different publisher back then. And I just remember this vivacious, beautifully dressed girl bouncing towards me going, hey, oh my God, my name's Jacqueline, how are you? And we were chatting and chatting. And I was like, oh, a lot of people at these conventions, they can be kind of quite insular and nervy. And she was really bubbly. And I was like, oh, great, someone that talks as much as I do. So we became friends. That was, 3 years ago? And it was about a year, maybe just over a year ago that Jackie called me. She called me up and we like to talk on the phone and just rant about anything and everything. And she said, I've got this really strange, you can say no. She said, you can say no about 20 times. I've got this really strange request. I'm thinking of writing a paranormal romance. I was like, yep. She's like, no, but serious, we could do it together. And I said, yeah. She said, we could publish it in India. I said, no, definitely 100%. She was like, really? I said, yeah, let's do it. So that was it really, wasn't it? I think we literally put that much thought into it. It was about a 2-minute phone conversation.
Yeah.
And then you already had the idea. You're like, well, we could, have this paranormal investigator called Saskia. It's just an idea. I said, yep, sounds great. But it's strange because you and I, we don't tend to kind of overthink things. We're just like, yeah, let's see what happens. And I think that freedom has created some really cool characters.
Yeah, it was pretty, so for me, it was basically because I have been indie, well, I'm traditional in some countries, but mostly indie. I feel alone a lot of the time. And then I was on a thread and I saw that, people do co-write together. And I think I maybe saw a whole sub-thread on it. And I was like, oh my God, that must be so amazing to just not be alone in this daily process, to have someone to consult on everything, talk to them about it. And that's where I had the idea. And yeah, it's been awesome, as I'm sure it has for you guys, but it is really nice to not, because it is a very, very low process, both writing, publishing. The whole thing is lonely from start to finish, and it's amazing to have one
I
person
never
to
asked
share
you
it
why
with.
you chose me, actually. Why did you choose me out of all these wonderful authors, you know?
I called like 26 people,
I was
including
going to say,
Dame
I was
Judy
literally
Dench,
the last,
and they're no,
last one on the list.
You were my first choice. No, you were my first choice. Okay, so there's a follow-up. What are some immediate pros and cons that jumped out at you when you made the decision to co-write? So back to Sasha and Serena for that, if there were any, if there were any that jumped out at you when you made that first decision.
I feel like for us it was mostly pros, at least when we were younger, because again, we're always together. And actually, when people do ask us this question, we're always kind of like, we think it's more difficult to write alone than together. I know a lot of people feel differently, but for us, it's always just been kind of like, we can brainstorm together, we can, be close to each other. Obviously, we don't always agree. That could be a con, but we just love what we do. And so writing together just feels really natural and we love it.
Yeah, that's amazing. We have some more questions about disagreements later that have been sent in. So we'll move on to that. Natalie, for you, were there any immediate sort of pros and cons that jumped out at you when making the decision?
Jackie and I are really busy anyway, so we've got our own projects, books that we have coming out, books that we hope to have come out in the future. I've got kids, Jackie's got her own busy life, and we live in different countries. So that was the only con. I was thinking, well, how are we going to fit all this in? Because not only were we writing together, but the fact that we went indie was something that was completely new to me. We planned to get a lot of books out in 1 year. So that was my biggest concern, was how we're going to fit it into our already busy writing world. And the fact that we live in 2 different countries. So how are we going to logistically communicate? But it's actually been pretty cool. I mean, we haven't yet had a big argument. It's been over a year. So yeah, we rarely disagree, but I think it helps that we're kind of open-minded about it all, and if anything, we're more worried about upsetting the other one than confrontational. So yeah, it's been a lot easier than I expected, and we're very honest with each other, aren't we? We don't bullshit, so that helps.
I did not see many cons, obviously, since it was my idea, and I was really, oh, we lost somebody, but we're going to go on. I was really eager to co-write something. So I didn't see many cons. I worried a little bit, and we're going to talk about this later, about conflicting egos and, ownership over ideas, and like, oh, well, because we're also under one pen name, the same way you guys share kind of an overall author brand. We share a pen name. But that hasn't, the idea of having someone there for you and the idea of sharing the workload outweighs all of that for me personally. So yeah, so I didn't see many cons. We're going to talk a little bit about technicalities right now. I think that's what's really interesting to most people when they hear about co-authorship. They're like, how does that work? Like literally, how does it work? So we're going to talk about, obviously we're in different situations, so we're going to take it one by one. But Serena and Sasha, could you tell me what a normal day of co-authorship looks for you? Yeah, just kind of talk me through the time management of it all, and maybe what programs are you using? Obviously it's different because you're in the same flat, but just talk me through it a little bit. Like how does it, how does your brainstorming look?
Yeah, so usually we both kind of have different strengths. So what we normally tend to do is like we kind of sit down and we both brainstorm what we want to write, and we just have like journals and journals full of ideas. And then what we tend to do is one of us will say, okay, we want to handle this scene or we want to handle this chapter. And then one of us will sit down and write it, and then the other will just read over it and kind of edit it. So what I really like to do is I like to go back and do the editing, because as much as I like drafting, I kind of prefer the revision process. And then we'll just kind of hand it back and forth. And that's what we've always done. And that's just what's worked for us. And yeah, we tend to use Google Docs. I don't know if you guys also do that, but it's just easier because both of us can be on the document at the same time and then editing at the same time, rather than both of us working on separate Word docs and then just kind of smushing everything together, which is what we used to do. But it's just so much easier now to use a Google Doc.
Yeah, we've just switched to Google Doc after experimenting a little bit. I'm really attached to Scrivener, so I was trying to find a way that we could also be on Scrivener. We switched to Word, sort of switching up the documents. And I think you're right. Google Doc having one singular book up on there and working on it together works for us because we don't live together like you guys. We have, we've also experimented loads, but it's come down to just the everyday or the every other day normal phone call after like extensive experimentation with all the different apps and stuff. We're just like, let's just call each other on the phone.
Old-fashioned phone calls, exactly. And we're really strict. Well, okay, I'm really strict about managing my time. Jackie's normally like, help me manage my time. I don't know what to prioritize. But no, we have to be really, really strict about it because, as we said, we've got other projects going on, plus, kids in the house and partners and other, and I've got, jobs. So we will say, okay, Monday between 9 and 11, we're going to work on this. We'll have a phone call for an hour. Then we'll work on it. As Jackie said, we've moved on to Google Docs for the editing side of things for the Vampire, the first book in the series. But before that, we had a Word doc. We just emailed it back and forth, which I kind of liked, because then like we'd get a little story time, wouldn't we, every day? And at one point we were really good. We were writing a chapter a day and just. So Jackie would send me like a saucy scene before bedtime, which got a bit weird, but in a good way. It was all like, wow, I'm gonna find out what happens next. But yeah, now we're at editing stage, so it's a different thing.
Yeah. Continuing on with technicalities and logistics, Sasha and Serena, I'd love to know how the querying process looked for you since you're a duo. Was there, I know you have one Instagram, one Twitter for your author brand. Maybe you also have personal accounts, and we're going to touch on that later. But for querying, I also know you're Pitchwar alums. But can you walk us through what the baby stages of entering the industry looked like as, a twosome? Did you have one email box that you checked obsessively every morning? So what did that look like?
Yeah. So basically, we started querying in 2015, I think. So it was, and that year, the next year is when we did Pitch Wars in 2016. So that was with a different manuscript, and we queried for about 2 years before we got an agent in 2017. And then after Pitch Wars, because we didn't have enough to do with school, we just decided to start writing another book in December 2016, which ended up becoming Sisters of the Snake, which will be coming out next year. So it was a pretty fast querying process for that book, because what we ended up doing was we did a pitch contest on Twitter. It's called DV Pit, if you've heard of that. It's basically like a pitch contest for diverse voices. So we did that in April 2017, and then we got our agent in May, so the next month. So it was a very quick querying process for that book, but then we ended up taking a while to revise the book. And then now it's going to be coming out.
Very cool.
So yeah, it was a bit of a longer process for the first book that we queried, that we did with Pitch Wars, but then for the Sisters of the Snake, that one happened very fast. And I think it was just because of the experiences that we'd had before with Pitch Wars and with revising, we just kind of became better at it. So yeah, it took a few years, but it's actually pretty fast, all things considered.
And the novel you pitched before, did it also have a twin narrative, or did you move on to that with DV Pit? Okay. Yeah. Okay, cool. Now we're going to touch on money, the fun, uncomfortable subject. I think this is also a technicality that would interest a lot of people. Obviously, co-authorship is half the profits, so half of the $10 million, which is really difficult. But it's also
I have to share my mansion with you.
It's also half the workload and the added benefit of being alone in this big journey. So for Natalie and I, and you guys will be familiar with this with your the Pendant trilogy. Is it a trilogy? It is a trilogy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't misspeak. So for us in the indie world, for Vampires of Moscow, faster writing means more pay for your co-authorship. That's, a well-known indie fact. So this is a big plus for us when it comes to the money discussion. Is going into trade publishing as a co-author duo, is that a concern that it's going to be, half the profits? Not for you as people, because that would be rude to ask, but in general in the industry, is that, a bit stranger, or does it have the same pros as the indie world would have?
I think for indie publishing, yeah, it is a different world, but we kind of knew going into traditional publishing that what it would be like because we'd heard, how would you advances work, how do royalties work, and what kind of cut you get when you're with a traditional publisher. So we already had that in mind, and we already knew what that was going to be like. But I think that kind of publishing traditionally does have its benefits in terms of distribution and things like that. So we already kind of knew that if we wanted to take this path, then that's what it's gonna look like, But I think that in terms of money, like it's been a lot better for us to go kind of the traditional publishing route. Where like for indie, like if you're really good at selling ebooks and stuff, then I think like, and you write books really fast, then that's amazing. But I don't think we're churning out like 1 or 2 books every year the way a lot of other people are doing them. We're kind of taking our time, and it takes a few years in traditional publishing, but I think that's better for us in the long term.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you're right. It does depend on the avenue that people choose to take, because they're very, very different, obviously. But I also think that money is not a giant factor when people are deciding to go down this route anyway, because money is guaranteed in this profession, and it's not famous for its massive income streams. So I think that if people are deciding whether to co-author or not co-author, it's probably shouldn't play a giant role in the decision in advance.
Exactly.
So that's what.
Sorry about that. It just threw me out. I came back.
No problem, Natalie. Natalie, I've answered for us in indie publishing. Speed is great. So, but we didn't want to pay in quality. So, we didn't want to decrease our quality. So we're not trying to be as fast as some indie people out there, but it definitely has helped. Okay, moving on to the second most. Yeah, sorry, Natalie.
So did you mention how our beautiful covers were thanks to you, and how much work went into managing to do a lot of the things ourselves? So with indie, that we're trying to reduce our overhead. So a lot of the marketing, website covers were actually done by us as well.
Yes.
I know you don't like blowing your own trumpet.
It's okay. I have a question about covers later, but the indie world is a different world. And to sort of keep our overheads low, I learned Photoshop and did all for our 6 book series, but it was fun in the end. So the next question is, as uncomfortable as money, that's ego. Writers are also, I was going to say writers are more famous for their egos than their money. But writers have giant egos sometimes, not everyone. Let's talk about this idea of, idea sharing, author brand sharing, individuality, bruised egos. I think that would be a concern for people going in. We're going to start with Serena and Sasha, and you do share an author brand, obviously, in a way, it's twins writing about twins, on sharing, the Twitter and the Instagram and stuff. What do you think about, if one of you wanted to branch out, or would one of you ever want to branch out, or what would that look like? Created a joint brand, and was individuality and idea sharing ever an issue for you?
I don't think that idea sharing has ever been an issue, because we kind of come up with ideas better together. So doing something alone has always been a bit more difficult for us. We have definitely written things alone, like short stories. For example, for school, we had to write short stories individually. But when it comes to writing a novel, that's definitely something we haven't done yet and haven't branched out yet individually. So, that might happen in the future, but for now, we've definitely been kind of like, we're writing together. Like it's been sort of, I guess, just more an unspoken thing where we're writing together. We love to write together. Let's continue this. So it's never really been much of an ego problem. Yeah.
Okay.
And in terms of the author brand, like it is easier just to be online and have, the one account on Twitter and Instagram. But we do also have our own personal, obviously our own personal Instagram and Twitter and whatever, because, you just want to talk to your friends or whatever. But yeah, that's not really been a problem, and it's just easier for people to find us online that way. But yeah, I'm always telling Sasha to write a thriller.
Yeah.
You just love reading thrillers. I love thrillers.
That'd be cool.
I don't.
So we obviously share one pen name, Cadis Knight. So I'm going to ask Natalie, were you ever concerned about, idea sharing and bruised egos when it came to writing under the pen name of Cadis Knight?
Not really. I mean, I was saying earlier to all of you, I'm a lot older than you guys, right? I'm 42 this year. I've spent 20 odd years working in industries and writing where, if it's not someone I'm working with in my team that ends up, get in their way and not me, it's an editor that wants to change something, it's my boss that wants to change something, it's the industry itself or the publishers that want to change anything. So, I'm quite used to being told no. I'm quite used to rejection. I'm quite used to people going, well, that looks like utter shit. Let's cut 16,000 words of that. And I'm like, okay, fine. So, and I think to some extent you are as well, Jackie, because you're pretty good at when someone says, no, actually, I don't like that idea. We've never really got upset about it. I don't think either of us are so attached to it because we started this from scratch together. So none of the it wasn't like you had a whole world fully formed and came and said, hey, do you want to help me write this? That would have been harder then for someone to jump in and change it. But we invented the whole thing from scratch together. So we haven't really had too many disagreements. And, there's been times when I've rewritten big chunks and you've rewritten big chunks and it's just sounded better. I don't think either of us has ever agreed that it hasn't. It'd be different if it was like my series and suddenly someone jumped in and took over halfway through something I'd written on my own. But no, I think it's been fine.
Yeah. So I think if people take one thing away from this panel, it's that don't force partnerships. The ones that come naturally and work naturally are the better ones. And also try and start from the brainstorming part together, because then everyone has ownership over one giant whole, rather than parts of it. We have a question. Also, Natalie, get a chance, maybe you can restart your video because it's frozen on my end, but Danny will tell you more on that. I don't know if it's frozen for everyone. We have a question from Claire on Twitter, and that's, do you keep each other motivated? Is something that you do? And if you do that, how each other motivated? We'll start with Serena.
So I think that sometimes we do kind of get into a writing slump, or we get into days where we're like, I don't know what to do. We're kind of in a bit of that situation right now as we start working on the sequel to Sisters of the Snake. So one of the things we really need to do before we start writing a book is just sit down and talk. Like, it can just be about any scene, anything, the beginning, the end. We just need to talk it through and just kind of understand that we both have these different ideas, but we find that when we just talk and let our ideas, like tell each other about our ideas, that we just come to, everything just comes together. So, the other day we were just talking about the sequel. How do we want it to start? We weren't really sure where to begin. And then we figured out, as we talked, we just figured out what to do. It just clicked. Okay. So it just kind of comes together naturally.
Okay, and a tiny follow-up to that, if you could do, and then I'll go to Natalie, if you could do one thing to cheer your co-author up on a hard day, what would be that one thing? Is it like grab them a Starbucks or something like that?
I think we definitely, something that we love to do to kind of cheer each other up is cooking. Mm-hmm. We just love to cook together. So I think that sometimes if we're really feeling down or maybe confused, we don't know what to do, sometimes I just need to pull myself away from the computer screen, pull Serena away from the screen and say, hey, let's cook something, or, let's just do something completely different from writing. And it really kind of brings you to a different state of mind.
Very cool. Natalie, what would you do to cheer me up?
I don't know. You tell me. What do I do? I think we call each other up, and sometimes we literally talk for about a whole hour about everything that isn't the books. We'll just slag off everyone and get really angry and pissed off with the world and get it out of our system. Then we're like, so what was this phone call about? Oh yeah, chapter 9. So we do laugh a lot, I think. In all honesty, I know Jackie's being really professional right now, but she is one of the funniest people I know. So she has me proper howling with laughter, and that helps. And I think we're good at our strengths. When one of us is feeling optimistic, the other one's feeling pessimistic. We kind of each other up, and I'm glad that we do, because, as you were saying earlier, it's such a lonely business. So just to be able to ring someone and say, I can't do this, and they're like, no, that thing you wrote in the last chapter was brilliant, keep going. It's really nice.
Yeah.
It's nice to know there's someone at the other end about to read what you've written and give you immediate feedback.
Yeah.
You know?
We
What
give
about
each
you?
other
What do you think?
we give each other regular pep talks. We have regular complaining fests. So like 20 minutes
Big
of
complaint.
complete judgment-free complain about everything. Like you can be like, oh my God, my baker, he's such a, swear word. I wish he would fall off a cliff. And like, there's no judgment in that. And then, so we do that. We also send each other a lot of Netflix recommendations and a lot of memes and success stories and like rated R jokes. Those are I think our go-tos
That's
for
fair.
things.
Oh,
Yeah.
and lots of pictures of really hot people. Lots of hot people pictures. That the hot people pictures. Should I not be saying that? Sorry.
No. We also
don't do that. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we also
That's
we
someone
also
else.
send each other a surprising amount of photographs of very attractive people. So I don't know. It's just
It's character research.
It's
It's
character
just
research.
research, Jackie. We had this conversation.
Yeah.
It's research.
We've got another
100%.
question from Claire, who's on Team Beaver, which is the YA team that will win, in case anyone's not in the know. What is the funniest moment you've had working together? And we're also going to start with Sasha and Serena on that one.
I think that we have just kind of like small funny moments together where we just sort of like, depending on the TV show that we're watching or like whatever is kind of like our inside joke of the week, we'll like, whenever we send each other the Google Docs through the email, we'll like type a little like quote from a TV show, or we'll like put something in the body of the email and then we'll just send it to each other. And then whenever the other person gets the email, we just kind of do a little laugh to ourselves like, oh, haha, like no one understands this joke except for us. So I feel like those are kind of like just little small funny moments that we have. We basically talk in movie references and inside jokes, and no one understands it.
Oh, I'd love to test your movie references sometime, because I just drop those into all conversations and no one ever seems to know what film I'm referring to. I love talking movie references. What is the funniest moment we've had, Natalie? So for Natalie and I, we do have some kind of sexy scenes in a lot of our work. And I think writing those two together is hilarious. We're not going to go into the details, but it's really funny.
I'm actually laughing at myself. I'm laughing. Well, first of all, I want to say, if this is Claire Knight that sent this message, there was someone on Twitter called Claire Knight who said it was her birthday weekend. And I said, if you send in some questions, I'll say happy birthday to you. So I'm saying happy birthday.
Claire.
If you're watching,
Claire.
But yeah, I'm giggling to myself because there was one scene with certain mermen. And I did write. I mean, I wrote some ridiculous lines, mainly just to amuse myself. And Jacqueline was like, "No, you got to take that out." I was like, "Oh, come on, they're really fun." You're like, "They're really disgusting. Just take it out." And it still makes me laugh now. We didn't keep it in, but it amused one another. We do like put some things in there sometimes.
Oh yeah, puns. We put in puns, and then also it's just funny reading what the other one finds to be sexy. And it's funny when it's because we've got a lot of sexy paranormal people. They're not people, but characters. And sometimes you're just like thinking of the logistics. Like we've got a mermaid compilation of like how mermaid, how do they reproduce? Like what is all of that? And we just had like a 2-hour meeting about it. And I was like, I can't do
mermaid
this anymore.
genitalia.
Too much now.
We had a really long mermaid
festival.
genitalia conversation.
PG-13
Sorry,
festival.
I didn't use. Okay.
But
Body
it's world building, and we need to understand, how more mermaids are happening, and we had a lot of trouble with that. So
it's true. It was the same with the vampire teeth. Like how do they detract? How do they come out? We just had. It was funny though. It's fun.
Yeah. So we have talked about logistics already on the panel, but we have a question from Rachel on Twitter. How do you get aligned with plot? And then there's a follow-up question that fits well from Amy on Twitter is, have you ever fundamentally so also going to bring it over to Sasha and Serena on that one. Yep.
I think in terms of aligning ourselves with the plot, we do a lot of brainstorming. So again, we have like our sessions together and then we'll talk, and it's basically just us trying to figure out what's going to happen in the book. Again, we might have some disagreements, but it always comes down to what's going to be best for in service of our readers. So I think we always kind of come down to something that we both agree with. Yeah. And because we sit down and we're definitely plotters more than we are pantsers, but that doesn't mean that things can't change along the way. But obviously we like to kind of have a plan going into something. But that allows us to kind of be more free when we're actually writing it. I feel when you kind of know what's coming, but you can kind of still be kind of loose with what's going on in between those bigger moments. And then if we do disagree on something, I find like we always try to come to a consensus on something. And because we're twins, like we generally do have a lot of similar ideas, but obviously one of us thinks of something, one of us thinks of another thing, and usually we just have to kind of let it sit for a few days and think about what's the best path to take. And then usually we just agree on that, and try not to make it a big deal, because at the end of the day, it's just a plot point that will probably change.
You've answered a follow-up question from Rachel about whether you're both plotters or pantsers. You said you're plotters. I think in a co-authorship, there's a limited amount of pantsing. Is that a pantser? Because you'll be wasting a lot of the other person's time as well if you don't know where the story is going. So Natalie, you're a plotter, I think it's fair to say.
I wasn't at the beginning. Obviously, with my debut, it was the freedom. I spent 3 years writing, and it was like, what's going to come out of it? But then when you're on like editor deadline, or when you set deadlines for yourself, or you've got a lot of projects on at the same time, you don't have that luxury of just like, I wonder what's going to happen next. I go right down to spreadsheets, beat sheets. I write the synopsis and the blurb before I even start the first chapter. I have Pinterest boards. And then, with Jackie and I, we have like a 50-page world-building document, because we were like, we both need to know exactly what all these characters look like, how they sound, what's going to happen, their backstories. So much, it's like the iceberg analogy. Like, this is what the readers see, but the writers see so much more, so that it's credible. So, we're not really going to fall out over it, are we? Because any discussion about what happens and what the characters are like have already been done. So then when it gets down to writing each chapter, and we take it in turns, one of us writes all the odd numbers, one of us writes all the even numbers, then within them, I don't think we've ever kind of been outraged by anything, really. We might have said, that doesn't work, and Jackie's great with the humor, and she's really, really good at adding depth and like some really kind of gritty stuff. But you write quite quick and sharp, whereas I kind of drag it on a look. So we kind of we even it out. So we've ended up with a voice that's a third voice, really, haven't we, between us?
Yeah, I'd like to ask Serena and Sasha about this. So Natalie and I have divided areas of expertise. I really like dialogue. I like being funny, and I like the romantic scenes, which Natalie likes. Way better at fighting scenes and action and moving the plot along and description and world building and stuff. Do you guys also have your separate areas that you prefer? You've mentioned that one of you prefers editing over the other one, but do you have your other areas?
I think that we both do like a lot of similar stuff, but again, before we start writing, we'll actually tell each other which scenes that we each individually want to work on. So I might have been thinking about a scene for actually months, and then I'll finally write the scene. It might be usually an action scene. So I do like to write those kinds of scenes, but those also tend to be the scenes that I have to go back in and kind of fill up, because it can feel very sparse at first. But I do like those. And sometimes dialogue can be difficult, but when you kind of intersperse it between, again, moments of action, it can feel a lot more authentic. I really like description. Maybe I'm a little too descriptive, but I just really like to lay on like world building, description, things like that. And again, that does come back to the idea that we are plotters, so we kind of already have these details in our minds. And sometimes as we revise, we kind of have to pull back and be like, okay, what does the reader need to know? What do we need to know? Like, there's a difference. So that's kind of something there. I don't know. Dialogue, I don't know if I'm the best at dialogue. I think it depends. Like when we write middle grade, I really like dialogue because it's just really sharp and funny. But that could really go for any age category or genre, but I just find with middle grade, like, we're a lot more humorous. So it's really fun to do dialogue for that. I think Natalie mentioned you guys like to write different chapters, like even numbers and odd numbers.
Yeah.
Like for us, it's not really divided in terms of chapters, but because of our upcoming book, since it is a dual point of view, it's from the perspective of twins. We did kind of think about, does one person want to handle one character? Does one person want to handle another character? And what we tend to do is one person will focus on one perspective and then we'll switch. So instead of one of us just dividing it between us, we'll just kind of focus for a few days on one character and then we'll switch it and then go back and forth like that.
That sounds very cool. When I was growing up, I was obsessed with this twins narrative, and one of them was named Artemis, and I can't for the life of me remember right now. They were witchy twins. Does anyone remember what that was called?
Are you talking about witches?
Maybe. Yeah, is one of them named Artemis in the book series?
Yeah.
Okay, now I have to go reread that.
Movie, not a book series.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a book, I don't know.
Yeah. All right, then we are moving into talking about branding and promotion. Sasha and Serena, have you ever disagreed on cover art?
So for the Pendant trilogy, we basically kind of came up with ideas of what we wanted the covers to look like because we were self-publishing, so we did have that kind of freedom. But we got some help from other people to actually design the cover because we can't do that ourselves. We're not very good at cover designs, but we definitely have an eye for what does look good on a cover and what attracts us to a cover. So we had like a general idea of what we wanted on each cover to kind of match the titles, and then like ideas for colors as well. And then we just sort of let the cover designer do the rest, and we generally agreed on it. With our upcoming book, it's a little bit different because it is with a traditional publisher. But again, we both kind of agreed on what we wanted, and then we sort of submitted a document to the publisher, and they sort of took what they wanted from that. And I can't say much more, but it's really good.
But shout out to them for wanting your initial input as well on, because that's not always the case, and that's very cool. Natalie,
we're very lucky that they did take our input.
Yeah. Natalie, I don't think we've disagreed much except for technical fixing up of the covers and stuff.
I think with the font, I had one vision, you had another vision, and then we were like, okay, it was a bit of a battle of the fonts. It was interesting actually because we both come from quite a creative design background. My dad's actually a graphic designer, so with my traditional publishers, I've always been really like, no, I actually got it put into the contract with my new. I really need to have a say on the cover. Not that I'm much of a control freak, but when Jackie said I'm going to start Photoshop and I'm going to do these covers myself, I was like, okay, I'm not very good at not being direct. What happens if they're really, really awful? How am I going to tell her without completely ruining everything we've got? Luckily, they're awesome, and I shouldn't have doubted that she was going to pick it up like that and done some really great work. And then with the fonts, it, as you said, I mean, you guys said the same thing. It's not really about what I like or what she likes. It's about what's right for the genre, what the readers are going to want. And we did a lot of research, and I'm really, really proud with what we've achieved, actually. Obviously the covers are mainly down to you anyway, but we had a vision between us and it worked. Yeah.
I'd like to briefly mention my friend Jen, who runs the Literary Galaxy shop, which is part of our Market Square. She gave up 4 days of quarantine to teach me Photoshop on live stream screen sharing. And without that, I would have never learned. But I suggest for all writers, one of my tips is learn some graphic design, because whether you're trade or indie, at some point, not outsourcing every little event announcement or email header or promo thing, is gonna
Yeah.
help. So that's definitely one thing that's like a
Yeah.
technical advice that I can give aspiring authors. For
Yeah, and
sure.
same with website. I mean, I did our website for us, but I've got two other websites, one for my business and one is NJ Simmons. I did them all myself, and it saves a fortune, but it gives you full control. And every time you need to update it, which you should be updating your author website all the time, same with your banners or your advertising, your publisher's not going to do it for you, even if you tried. So definitely, it's cheaper to go on a course than to rely on experts to do it for you.
Yeah. And moving on to some more questions from our audience. Just going to open them up right now. Is there something you would like to write in the future, and in what genre is that, that your co-author would 100% not be interested in doing with you? Yeah, let's start with Natalie and then move on to
Good question.
and Sasha.
I don't know. I mean, actually, it's not public knowledge, but I am working with another author. I had to run it past Jackie. Luckily, she knows her anyway. And I felt like I was cheating on you. I was like, do you mind if I write with somebody else with a completely different genre? And it's been interesting to compare both experiences. But I don't know what kind of. I'd love to do. I'd like to write more kind of women's fiction, like serious kind of literary women's fiction, but I don't think that lends itself well to joint author experience, to be honest. I think it's the fun stuff, middle grade, fantasy, paranormal. I think it'd be fun for us to do a fantasy together. More magic, but...
Yeah, I also would not be interested in doing horror. We just had a great horror panel, but the whole time I was like, nope, not me. No, thank
too scared to write horror. My mind's darker than anything. Yeah, don't want to do that.
Yeah, and something that I'm looking forward to doing on my own, I think, is rom-coms. I've gotten really heavily into reading rom-coms lately, and now all of these hate to love things are blossoming in my head. But that also lends itself well to co-authorship as well.
Yeah, I'd do a rom-com. I don't know if I'm good at it though. You're good at it. I don't know if I'd be any good at it.
Yeah, I think I would not be great at upmarket literary women's fiction, which you like. Sasha and Serena, is there anything, you've mentioned thrillers, is there anything you'd like to write in the future that your sister would not be into at all?
Well, I love historical fiction, which Sasha does not really agree with. Like I mentioned before, we have different genres that we like reading, and we both love fantasy, and we kind of dabbled in writing contemporary before as well, which we're both kind of on board for. But yeah, when it comes to historical, Sasha's really not about that life.
Yeah, what period of history?
Yeah. I really like World War II kind of stuff, or like I don't know, I'm obsessed with that. Anything in that era.
Could you do like a World War II thriller? You could blend it. You could do a thriller set in World War II. You could write that.
Yeah, I think for me also historical fiction seems really intimidating because I always think I'm making little mistakes someone is going to notice. Yeah. And if I also had to be true to all of history, I would feel the pressure mounting a lot more. But
my latest book is set. Yeah, my book's set in 1666, and it took 14 months to write. I'm querying it at the moment because the amount of research that goes into historical fantasy is crazy, actually.
Yes, a lot of research.
I like the idea of historical fantasy, though. I like the idea of adding magic to the past. I don't know.
Yeah, but then you've got world building and you've got research. So you've actually got double the amount of people that write contemporary romance. Yeah. You could just write whatever you want, but history and world building is really time consuming.
Yeah, it's really stressful because you can have dragons, but then a reader's going to come in and be like, you mentioned the wrong type of buttons, on the corset, or corsets are, I've already messed up. Corsets don't have buttons, but you know what I mean. People are going to be like, wrong corset.
How houses, I had to find out about Wattle and Daub, how houses were built in 1666 London, and my fantasy world's completely crazy. I can say what I want about that, but I can't get, potatoes went around. I have to keep remembering, no potatoes.
Yeah. Sorry. How do you divvy up promo as a duo? What kind of roles, for future events, COVID willing, I now say, are you going to always do them together? Do you divvy up the workload because there's a lot of promo that comes with authorship nowadays? And how does that look for you guys? We're going to start with Sasha and on that one.
Yeah, when it comes to social media kind of promotions, at least for things like maybe events and stuff like that, we've definitely already kind of gotten a handle on the sort of graphic design elements of that, because we also work as author assistants and as social media managers. So we kind of know how to make a graphic for an author event and kind of transfer those skills for our own future events. So in terms of online promo, like we both kind of know how to do that. We can divvy it up between ourselves. Maybe one of us will make some of the graphic and then the other one will look over it, kind of fix it up. We post it online. Yeah, I tend to do more of the website stuff because a few years ago I just kind of decided I want to learn how to, make a website. Like Natalie was saying, it's easier just to have a handle on that yourself. So I tend to do more of that. But I would say social media is pretty equal. And obviously in terms of real life events, we're both going to be there. And we've already done a lot of kind of in-person events like at schools and stuff where we talk at like middle schools and stuff like that about our books. And yeah, it's just more fun when we're together.
Yeah, amazing. Natalie and I have divided.
Just think it's so sweet.
Yeah, I want a twin now. It's unfair.
I know you've been together since literally conception, and you're still doing everything together. I think it's just really cute. Sorry, move on.
Don't make it awkward with that. You've been together since conception. Don't make it awkward, Natalie. So Natalie and I have divided it according to our strengths. There is obviously with trade a huge amount of promo that goes in, but with indie, it's literally, you guys know. So we divvied it up. Natalie's good on Facebook. I don't like Facebook because my family's on there. I'm good at Instagram. So we've divvied it up, and then we help each other out on the platforms as well. And we keep within our brand voice and stuff. Both of us have branding backgrounds. So we've kind of created like one person under Cadis Knight. And that's very liberating because that one person is like, speaks in a way that neither of us does. And I think that's
nobody knows
really
who's
fun.
behind the tweet. Nobody knows who's behind the tweet. We can say all sorts of things. No, that's exactly. We work to our strengths, and I think that's a really good thing about. I mean, I don't want to keep bringing age into it, but I really don't think I could have done this in my early 20s. I think I would have been a little bit more like, it's great that you guys are sisters because you have that openness. But I think if I'd have done this with a friend in my 20s, I'd have found it really difficult. I wouldn't have been as kind of tough skinned, and I would have been maybe a bit more precious about stuff. But that's the cool thing that with age comes that kind of experience where you know what your strengths are. And I'll say to Jack, I'm really crap at this. I'm really good at this. I'm not so good at that. And we go, okay, cool. What do you want to do? We're not embarrassed to say I'm really good at this. Let me do it. I mean, you've got like over 10,000 followers on Instagram, so it's like, great. I don't want to get involved in that. You crack on.
Yeah, definitely. Later in your career, the whole romanticism that you maybe had early on, where you're like, I can't share my precious 10,000 words because this is a future, award-winning bestseller. How could I share that? Like, kind of a lot of the precious goes away, and you're like, this is hard work. This is a long-term career, and you become a lot more comfortable with sharing, workload, credit, anything like that. For me, I come from a screenwriting background. That's what my master's is in. And if you do screenwriting, or if you're so used to sharing, so used to being like, okay, you're welcome right now. Now you're not welcome, and made into something else. So I'm quite used to it. I have a fun question, and then we're gonna have Natalie Sasha tell us about our upcoming books, and then wrap it up with maybe some last minute questions that have come in. So my fun question, pat myself on the back, is you've hit #1 on the bestseller chart, whichever one, not gonna name any, and you're gonna throw your co-author the ideal celebratory weekend to say thank you and to celebrate this great achievement. What does that weekend look like? It's designed around your co-author. So we're going to start with Sasha on that.
I mean, everything that we do revolves around reading our books somehow. So honestly, like every year on our birthday, we go to Indigo just because, which is like the equivalent of Barnes & Noble, but in Canada. So I just feel like something to do with going out to the bookstore. It might seem really mundane to people, but even like right now, like all I want to do is go to the bookstore. Like I haven't been there since February and I gotta go.
Yeah.
And it's just a really kind of special place to be. Like whenever we have some kind of celebration, like we always end up there. Like I remember when we got our official offer from HarperCollins, we were standing in the teen section of Indigo. So it just kind of feels like a special place.
Aww. That's really nice.
That's really lovely.
I would say like maybe go eat out somewhere, or just like have kind of a cooking and gaming weekend. Like we like to play games with our friends a lot, play video games as well, and like I don't know, just chill. Maybe watch some movies that we haven't seen yet. We like to watch a lot of Hallmark movies. I know those are like for a bit of older women audience, but we like to watch those.
That sounds perfect. A Hallmark gaming eating bookshop weekend to celebrate.
Exactly.
So like a treat yourself weekend. Natalie, what weekend would you throw for me?
Wow. Well, Jackie and I have slightly different lives, but what we have in common is the fact that we never get any peace and quiet. We have very demanding households, and we both lived all around the world. And I think I would bring her out to I'm in Spain at the moment, where I used to live, so I've still got a house here. That makes me, my family, my dad lives here. And I think I'd drag you out to Spain and we would just literally have a week on the beach, drinking cocktails and plotting our next books, but in complete silence.
Perfect.
You know, just the sea and the sun. I know you'd like that. We are going to do that. We don't have to get to number one to get
we
that.
can do that without number one.
I was going to say, we don't,
I always say my favorite music is silence. That's what I love.
At the moment,
no, always. So I've put more thought into this apparently than you have, Natalie. But I would
the question
somewhere like Prague and have a spa weekend where we relax, and then like a Magic Mike style party evening, because I feel like that's a fitting way. And just lots of research. So that would be.
Can we do that anyway? Can we do that anyway? Prague's not that far away. It's kind of
feel like
near Berlin and
all the ideas that have been bounced around are entirely doable. So we could just do that as soon as this madness is over. So now I'm going to leave it to Sasha and Serena for a couple minutes to tell us about their really exciting book that's coming out next year. And then Natalie's going to tell everyone about our book. And then we're going to wrap it up, unless anyone put some more questions in the chat on Twitch that we could quickly answer after that if we have time. So Sasha and Serena, please tell me everything there is to know about your book.
All right. So Sisters of the Snake is our brand new YA fantasy book. It's the first in a duology, so there will be a sequel. And it follows two main characters separated at birth. They're twins. And one of them is now the princess of the kingdom, and the other is a street thief. And Street Thief essentially despises the royalty and the magic that they supposedly have. And they end up meeting on Diwali night, and they decide to swap places. And there's a lot of shenanigans, and there's some romance and lots of fun stuff. Yeah. So it's...
they meet on Diwali. I love that.
Yeah, we were born on Diwali as well, so we definitely wanted to kind of incorporate that into the... Yeah, we definitely wanted to incorporate that into the story, especially because the kingdom is kind of based on our Indian background. So we really just wanted to kind of layer that into the story. Yeah, so that will be really out.
Exciting. And are people able to pre-order or sign up to a newsletter so that they're aware when the pre-orders go up, or what can people do now?
Right now, you can add it on Goodreads. So the pre-order link probably won't be up until the fall when the cover goes live.
Okay.
And then we also do have a newsletter. So you can go to our website, which is serenasashabooks.com. And that has all the information about, all our social media. Everything is on there.
Perfect. I was reading about you guys today, and then I was like, like a Prince and Pauper retelling and like twists and stuff. That's so exciting. And I was like, I love Prince and Pauper. Why have I never used that? And then I remembered that I have an entire Prince and Pauper sub-story in my first book where two characters have swapped places from a rich background and a poor background, and one of them is a thief. And I was like, how did I just forget a sub-story in my book? Which is great. It's great that I didn't try to do that a second time. Yeah, so I'm really excited genuinely about your guys' book. Thank you so much for telling us about it. And now Natalie, tell us about Blood Web Chronicles.
Yeah, well, as we've mentioned, Jackie and I write as Caedis Knight, and I will spell Caedis because it's a made-up name, Caedis, and Knight with a K. And so if you look at caedisknight.com, our website, it's probably the quickest way to find all our social media handles and accounts, and it links you directly to your Amazon. So as we mentioned before, they're indie. Blood Web Chronicles is a series of what will be 6 books and 2 novellas, unless we get completely carried away and we just keep going. And the first book, which is, who knows, Vampires of Moscow, is out on the 15th of October. You can pre-order it now. But the cool thing is that we're also doing a novella, a prequel novella called Sirens of Los Angeles, which is only 99p or 80 cents if you know outside of the UK, or I don't know what that is in American cents, but it's not a lot, put it that way. And you can pre-order the prequel, which is really cool because each book is a different paranormal and mainly European city, because Jackie and I have lived all around the world and we speak a number of languages between us, so we want to bring that into the stories. And then this novella lets you see an insight into how Saskia, the main character, she's a Verity Witch, how her sister went missing, which is a thread that runs through the whole series. So you don't have to read the books in order, but there is one ongoing mystery all the way through the series. Yeah, that's it. That's what we're working on. So they both come out on the 15th of October. We've had lots of pre-orders already. We're really thrilled that everyone's so excited, and follow us on social media because we're still building up our Twitter, and our newsletter will be out soon because that's on my to-do list. but the website's up.
Yeah, and it's good for fans of Veronica Mars and True Blood because it's at the convergence of that. So I'm just checking in to see if there are any other follow-up questions. There was a follow-up question about where the name comes from.
So Caedis. Yeah. Well, it actually is. It comes from the word Caedis. I think it's pronounced Caedis, which Latin means horror, slaughter, and death. Because we're jolly like that. Because we knew the books were going to be really kind of we call it romance with bite. You know, we knew they were going to be quite a bit saucy and romantic in places, but also quite dark. And night, it just sounded well together, and it's with a K, but obviously a lot of it is set in the night time because it's vampires and werewolves and stuff. But what's really good fun is that the Verity with Saskia is a Verity Witch. So that's how she became a reporter for this dark web called the Blood Web, which only paranormals have access to. So I've a lot to thank Jackie for, because actually each story does have quite kind of serious political and newsworthy themes as well. You know, it's not completely light and fluffy. So there's a lot of that happening.
Yeah, they're called the Blood Web Chronicles because it's essentially about a paranormal version of the dark web and crimes that happen on the dark web. So it's very techy. There's a lot of cryptocurrency, dark web stuff, and just stuff that we're afraid of in our future. That's it for us, folks. We're wrapping it up in the next 2 minutes. I'd like to say thank you so much to Sasha and Serena for joining us today. Thank you, Natalie, for joining us as well. And if you can't wait and if you can't wait for the co-authored projects, then you can check all of us out. You can check Sasha and Serena out on Instagram. They already have a trilogy out. Natalie's got a trilogy out. I've got trilogies for days. Everyone has a trilogy. Come and see our trilogies, people. I'd also like to say, don't forget to check out our Market Square. We've got an amazing lineup of shops that are supporting us, and we're supporting them, and they've got discount codes, and they're doing all sorts of merch. Check out Room to Read, which is our charity partner. Join us for the closing ceremony today as well. And there's still time to join a team and do some challenges and make sure that you win. Just saying. Which is my team, as I'm sure everyone's guessed. But yeah, so it was amazing to talk to you guys. Just checking the feed one last time. I'm like trying to keep this to the minute, basically.